Greetings and salutations, folks. My name is Nick, and welcome back to Forza Motorsport 7, where we have one last set to run before we are done with the Masters Championship. We've done quite a few races, largely because I got 6th on that one race and never bothered to go back to raise my points. But, would that still be enough? That would have still been enough. Either way, let us get going with some classic street muscle.
When you strip them down to the chrome, muscle cars are rather simple despite their sound and fury. Take a big engine, keep adding power until you wake the neighborhood when you rev it up. They are loud without apology, and we love them for it.
Let's get the one that gives us more money just for racing it. The 1970 Chevrolet Super Sport. Forza Edition. So does that mean that it did or did not exist? Any cool designs? That one's... a lot of low star options. I'm surprised it doesn't just automatically populate my choices with, like, the really popular ones. I'll go with this one, because it's a little bit different from what I have driven before. And I didn't even bother paying attention to see if I actually have money to buy the car, but I did, as it was only 125,000 credits, and I had 175. Not a very complex race for the starting one. Let's toss on some mods. Yeah, maybe we'll stay on the track for one lap. Let's find out. I mean, I suppose it's probably going to be easier in regards to doing so with the muscle car, especially versus the cars that I was driving previously, which capped out at about like 180 miles per hour. These muscle cars are not going to be going that fast, I would imagine. I would imagine this race is going to be somewhere between 90 to 120 miles per hour. I did not bother to look up which way we're going first, so it's going to be like a little bit of a turn to the right. No. Oh, I definitely did not pass the stay on track for this lap. There we go. There goes that guy. Now we just have 4 places to make up. And I'm not entirely worried about my position. To the point where, like, minor mistakes are going to cause me to rewind. Like, if it's a major mistake, like I go off the track, crash into a wall, explode, then I might rewind. Because the thing is, oh my gosh, never mind. I'm not going to get this stay on track. Because it doesn't matter how well I do in this set. I think I'm less than 1,000 points from completing the Masters Championship, which I'm pretty sure I could get even if I show up last in every single race. Yeah, it looks like we're topping out at about 110 to 120 miles per hour. And that's on a straightaway. That's on a perfect, long straightaway. So we're probably going to spend most of our time between like 80 to 100 miles per hour. this is a little bit tricky of a course to consider the idea of staying on track. Simply because it's sometimes a little bit hard to tell where the track stops. Like other courses are a lot easier because you can just look at the track, you could look at the grass. Whereas this one has sidewalk involved. Though I can play it pretty safe for the rest of the race. Because I think I've got a good enough lead that I could finish this race, race cautiously, stay on the track for a full lap, and accomplish all of these things, while also having enough brain cells, oh, son of a... brain cells left to actually discuss things. I'm just going to remove that mod from here on out. Because, yeah, it's not going to work out well. I'll just sell the mod so I won't even be tempted to even have it listed. Alright, first race is done. That went pretty well. Let's get rid of the unwanted mod and sell it. Actually, let's no, we don't want that. Let's see, braking line only and stay on track. Good luck. Improved race awards. Let's sell the ones that don't give us money, because we're only in it for the money. We're not really in it for the experience. Except for when it comes to playing the game. Then we're in it for the experience. But during play of the game, we're in it for the money. I swear that makes sense somehow. First turn is to the right after a rather lengthy straightaway, which actually I'm perfectly fine with. Because when the first turn is usually really close up, that generally leads to a lot of congestion. That leads to a lot of cars crashing against other cars, which, sure, that's exciting, but it's also kind of messy to drive through. And with this extra bit of road, I can kind of ease my way past some of them, some of these other drivers. Alright, finish in 4th place. Sorry. Unfortunately, that does give an advantage to the first place driver. But I've got like 4 laps to catch up with them. And I'm confident that I can do that. I am not confident that I can do that while staying on in my lane without going off track, which is why I definitely do not miss that mod. Well, what was I saying about rewinding in case I make huge, stupid mistakes? Clearly, I guess I don't need to do that. Ah, nope. No passing me. Although I've already talked about this before, the idea that, like, when I'm closer to the front, I can make more big, stupid mistakes. When I'm farther back, not so much. Oh. Wow, that was, what the game called a perfect turn. I can actually make some of those. Not too many of them. How does my car actually look after all of that? It doesn't actually look so bad. I think I did most of my fender bending in regards to the front bumper. So at the very least, this race, I can drive my car back to the mechanic, and they'll be like, we've seen you come in with worse. We can actually maybe fix this damage pretty easily. But yeah, now I'm actually gaining distance. And there's not too much they can do. Which you could... previously I talked about the idea that, like, there's... the AI doesn't necessarily provide that much variety because it's focused more on, like, the individual drivatar. And it's based on everybody's drivatar, even though they might not have played the game. But another thing you could say is that there's a certain element of aggressiveness that doesn't necessarily... like, there's... it doesn't necessarily feel like the other racers are racing harder because they're farther behind. Like, when I'm driving, I can tell that there is a difference between how I drive when I'm behind and how I drive when I'm in front, which you could argue is a mistake, because in reality, you probably should be driving as fast as possible. Sorry, mechanic. I know I promised a clean car. As fast as possible. Regardless. But at the same time, if you feel like somebody's ahead of you and you have to catch up, suddenly you start having to make adjustments to how you handle turns. And it doesn't necessarily feel like the other racers' hunger for victory. Alright, now we are just have to complete out this series, and we have earned the championship. But that, like, what I'm thinking of kind of goes along the idea that there could be, like, multiple sets of AIs even associated with one driver. Let's toss on... Actually, is it raining? Yes, it is. It's supposed to rain. The last 2 times we were driving, and it said it was gonna rain, it did not rain, but it's raining now. So... let's go with... brake line only. Oh my. Just in time. Improved race rewards. Improved race rewards. Alright. And let's toss on that and that. First turn is to the left. Like, you could have a certain AI setting attached to a racer when they're in the lead, when they're behind, depending on how far behind they are, that might affect how they drive. Because, like, one thing in regards to racing games is that, like, they don't necessarily have to be populated with tons and tons of effects. There are exceptions to this rule. Consider a game like Forza Horizon, where you have the full city that you're driving along. Like, Forza Horizon games tended to have more limited pools of racers. Because the game had to actually populate so much of the world. But when you consider a game like, say, this, the more advanced the hardware gets, the easier it is going to be to render a racetrack and a certain amount of cars. Because you're not really going to populate it past a certain amount of cars, because eventually, like, the track would just become too crowded. Like, right now, there's about 16 racers, I think. I didn't count them. I've never counted them, despite the fact that I'm, like, 21 episodes into this Let's Play. But imagine if there were 32 cars. Just how crowded it would be. Like, it would be almost unplayable. So there is a limit in regards to, like, once you're simulating, like, how much you have to render, which leaves a lot of the horsepower towards rendering the physics simulation. Which you could say that as time progresses, more and more horsepower figuratively and literally, I guess, figurative horsepower that drives the virtual cars could be spent on minute pieces of gear. Like, imagine a future in which at one point, like, every individual piston within the vehicle is modeled and is actively working. Like, in theory, that we could eventually reach that point. But as we do go closer and closer, there's also the chance that we could possibly use that additional processing power as a means of maintaining or creating instructions for the AI. Like, multiple layers of instructions dependent on the race and positioning. And I think that would make racing against the AI generally more interesting. Although I suppose it always depends on the demand for single-player racing. Like, it's kind of like bots. One of the most disappointing things that a multiplayer game can have, aside from being only playable online, is no bots. Like, there are plenty of dead online shooters that are unplayable because there's no network connectivity, or if you did even have network connectivity, you wouldn't be able to find other people to play with. And bots solve that problem by at the very least allowing a player to actually experience what a game was like despite not playing it at launch when it was new. Like, there's one game I would like to try, and I don't believe it has bots, which means that I can't ever actually really try it. And that was the shooter Mag, which had like 150 player matches. And the reasoning it probably doesn't have bots is because that way they don't really have to worry about the AI for like 160 shooters, or 160 opponents. Not to mention, like, if it was really poorly done AI, they would just snipe you from like 100 miles away. And then you'd be like, oh, I guess this is what it was like. But considering we're on Forza Motorsport 7, and there's still a pretty hefty single-player mode, and we're coming along with Forza Horizon 5, and that's That's too expensive for me. Well, let's get some driver gear.
Driver gear, I see. And you'll be able to wear it whenever you choose.
I'll wear it now. So yeah, considering that there is... let's get rid of this. I don't think I'm gonna get 8 good turns in one race. Let's toss on that, and that. But yeah, considering like Forza Horizon 5 is going to be coming out, and that's going to have its own single-player content, like, it makes sense that the idea that eventually they would want to do more in regards to how AI is implemented in these games. Even if I suppose the entire idea of planning for legacy content isn't really financially viable. It does mean that people are going to be able to buy your game and enjoy your game much longer after its narrow window of launch. Because there are plenty of Battle Royale games that have come out that are dependent on possessing a wide community, and if it doesn't have that community, it gets shut down. Like, Fallout 76's Battle Royale mode is getting shut down, which I would put all of the blame on Bethesda for that one, because they did nothing to update it. Like, say what you want about not Fallout. Wow, brain has shut off, can only do driving and nothing else. That big popular one from Epic, oh my gosh. There's tons of updates. It's always updating. Apex Legends is updating. Fortnite, wow. That took me much longer than I wanted to, but I think that's just evidence to, like, if you've ever checked what your computer is actively processing, and it's like 50% of its processing power is going to something, and you're like, oh, no wonder it doesn't seem to be able to run anything else. Like, playing this game makes me feel like I'm having that same issue. Like, 50% of my processing power is going towards Forza Motorsport 7, and then if I need to do basic memory tasks, like remember the name of Fortnite, like, it's just gone. But yeah, Fortnite is always updating, Apex is updating. Like, these games have to... Like, the games as a service model doesn't work if the game does not provide a service. Like, once a game stops updating, generally that's when player drop-off happens. And which is fine for games like with single-player content. Like a game that has its big Game of the Year edition that contains all of the expansion packs. That usually is the game's final chance to become that really big seller before the studio moves on to the next one. Mortal Kombat 11 recently completed out the last of its downloadable content, which in its Twitter announcement, I noticed a lot of people were commenting like, but what about balance issues? It's like, all of these can be fixed in a patch. Just because they're not creating downloadable content does not mean that they wouldn't necessarily at some point go back and catch balance issues. But there's a big difference between the support of a community for this, for a project, versus when you finally have to cut off and move on to something else. And the problem with, like Fallout 76's Battle Royale mode is that they were always offering it. They weren't really cutting, and they just stopped because they're like, nobody's playing it, so we should stop offering it. Like, they didn't say, oh, we only offered 2 maps, and we never bothered adding on to the maps or changing anything. Wow, just barely in time. I almost didn't even notice the fact that I was on lap 404 because I was just the BS coming out of my mouth was nonstop. Alright, that was race 4 out of 6. We got 2 more to go. Doesn't matter how well we do, but we are doing pretty well. This is admittedly more my speed. I can relax a little bit, as opposed to, the super fast cars that go like 150 or 180 miles per hour. It is night, so let us put night race and night race. And let us buy some night race. I was really hoping that they were going to have a race at night mod, just so I could say night race again. Alright, first turn is to the left. We got a little bit of a closed pinch towards the middle. Also, I just realized that I have Saints Row colors. It's not quite flashy enough to be a Saints Row car. Like, there's something missing that prevents it from being a Saints Row car, but it's a start. Alright, now we've got the sudden pinch over here. I do not appreciate being on the outside of this turn. I blame whoever's in that red car. Completely. And now, this is interesting. This variant of this particular track spends like a good third of the time just on this really long... on this really long straightaway. No, I don't need to rewind. That was as good as it's gonna get. In fact, it was perfect in every way, and everybody loved that turn, especially that person that I just passed right now. You didn't see him because it was really fast. But I swear... Actually, that leads to... That's, one of my favorite aspects of the video game Hades. There's a... In Hades, there's a fight that you have inside of an arena, and you are not the hero of the arena. The people in the arena are the heroes. And whenever you win, there is like one lone fan who cheers you on. And every time I played through Hades, I always would run by that one lone fan. Because Prince Z, I forget the rest of his name, would always comment about it, and you'd see like an emoticon emote from that one fan. Always got a kick out of that one. So yeah, you don't see him or her or them. They're in the audience because they're an undefined individual. It's that one right there, right in the corner. Oh, no, no, no. I didn't pay attention to the turn, and that came a little bit too suddenly. So, as I've been playing this game, my methods of slowing down for a turn have changed a lot. At first, it was just the brakes. Then it was the brakes plus the emergency brake, except I didn't know what button the emergency brake was, so I pressed the wrong button and thought I was doing the emergency brake, but I wasn't, because I was stupid. Then it was the brakes and then just do nothing. Then I learned about what the emergency brake button was, and started to incorporate that into the turn, but not as much, and eventually that developed into a combo. Holding down the brake and the emergency brake at the same time. But, as you can tell from instances like the end of the last lap, when I wasn't paying attention to the turn that I sped up, to, like, it dramatically decreases speed. Once you go for brakes and handbrake, it's not exactly an easier thing to recover from. Ah, fantastic. Completing out those monthly races. All right. Let's slap on some mods.
You'll never get better just racing weaker opponents.
No. Not this time. Next time, you know, maybe I just won't bother worrying about the difficulty for the rest of the game, because there's not that much game left. And I don't necessarily know if I've really improved. There's always exceptions to every rule. Improved race rewards, more improved race rewards. We're gonna slap both of those down. Let's get rid of braking line only and do that. Fantastic. All right, first turn is to the right. Alright, let's cut between these two cars. And a little off-road. Excellent, except now we're on the inside of this turn. We can fix that. That, I think, is the first time I've tried that. I think in all of the time that I've been playing this game, I have not gone to a point in which I purposely slowed down in order to reclaim the inside turn. And that went splendidly. Also, I think this is the race that I always do well. So if this race turns out with me in like ridiculously way in the lead, it will just confirm my suspicions. Or should I say my familiarity with this track. Because if I remember correctly, the AI doesn't really know what to do with that one specific tricky turn towards the middle. It doesn't really understand the off-roading, which I suppose also goes into my ideas in regards to AI. Like, part of AI is giving your machines the ability to do something well, but also I would argue that part of it is giving your computer-controlled folk the ability to make mistakes. Like, I'm trying to think of a specific game that does this. But I'm sure there are a few that fall into this banner, like stealth action games. Here we go. Like consider games like Arkham Asylum, like the Batman Arkham games. Think about how enemies behave while you are not fighting them. They've got their initial patrol routes, and then they have a certain set of actions based on what happens after they see you. Then they have actions that allow you to get away. Once you get away, then they have another set of actions that are dependent on their own feeling, their own psychosis. Because you're the Batman. You're stalking these villains, and depending on like how many of their buddies you've just beaten up, they might actually find themselves in worse and worse condition, just freaking out, while you're taking them out one by one. So there's multiple levels of AI determining the behavior of these bad guys in the game. So the idea is not necessarily new. But it would be interesting to see it implemented in this particular setting, especially the idea that they could possibly make mistakes. Like, imagine if you had to race against somebody who was willing to drive off-road and crash your car off the road. And it was designed that way on purpose. I guess then you'd be playing F-Zero. I probably should just play F-Zero. All right. That went very well. And we are a Masters Championship winner. Once the game decides it adds up our totals.
Outstanding. The Master Championship is yours. Now you're on the verge of racing glory. Dig in and bring everything you have. You're now racing for the Forza Drivers' Cup itself.
In the meantime, got any suggestions for something to play next? Leave them down in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and have yourselves a good night.
This is it. The Forza Drivers' Cup. The race organizers saved the best for last.